Welcome back to Man Uprising. In this tool, I want to share with you what I call warrior marks. Now, in order to do that, let me tell you about a real life warrior I met. Her name was Maxine. I wrote about her in my book, Spark Seekers, True Story. Everything I say is true. Some of it actually happened. This one is true and it happened. And that is Maxine I met in Des Moines, Iowa, when I was a rabbi there, right out of rabbinical school back in 2002 to 2006. And she did yoga, or maybe she even owned, I think she just did yoga at a local yoga studio called Firehouse Yoga. If you're ever in Des Moines, maybe it's still there. Anyways, Maxine, I'd see her every day, and I would just find myself staring at her face. I don't know if she was 70 or 170, somewhere in between there, but she certainly had the face to reflect it. Now, probably 2000, I don't know my Botox, probably before Botox, but even if Botox was available, I don't think that was in the cards for Maxine. I mean, I can't imagine there was any remedy for all of those lines in her face. I don't know if you've ever seen somebody like just beyond lines, like craggly, parched earth. I mean, her face was just had fissures in it. I can't even describe it. I can see it all these years later. And at first I found it, if I'm being honest, a little ugly, certainly scary. I mean, one of those things like you just can't help but stare, but you don't want to stare, but you got to stare. And I don't know, I don't remember exactly what happened. All I remember is Maxine and I started talking. And then we went out for coffee. And over the next, I don't know, couple hours, I listened to a heartbreaking tale. Maxine lost everybody. I mean, she reminds me of my teacher and mentor, Viktor Frankl, who went through the Holocaust. Now, she didn't go through the Holocaust, but she went through her own personal concentration camps, losing her husband and a daughter and battling cancers and, financial despair and just, I mean, the battlefields of life. There was like buckets. She hit every single one of them. And I remember feeling not sad or sort of down in despair afterwards. I remember feeling awed, inspired. It's sort of the description people talk about when they read Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. It's a weird thing, but you read a Holocaust narrative, his story, and yet you come out the other side hopeful for humanity and sort of inspired, definitely inspired to go out and live your life. That's how I felt with Maxine. I didn't feel sorry for her anymore. I certainly didn't think she was ugly. In fact, every time I looked at her thereafter, I didn't see lines, I didn't see imperfections. I saw warrior marks because this was a woman who had earned each and every one of those sort of those warrior marks, those symbols that she had not only lived, she had faced all that life had to offer. She not only survived, she went on to her life to live and to thrive. I can't describe to you the transformation that I saw. She was the same woman before and after, but I was less judgmental. I was certainly less shallow, and I was absolutely and unequivocally changed for the better, having met a real life warrior who wore her warrior marks proud and brave. I do not pass judgment on anybody for how you choose to live your life. I don't pass judgment on anybody for Botox, men and women. Women, I should say, and even some men. You do what you got to do. You do you. All I can share with you is my view of a woman's face was forever changed. And I really do challenge women and men to think about getting rid of those blemishes, getting rid of the imperfections. And I'm not just talking about, the lines in our face, because there's all kinds of ways we can Botox out those warrior marks, those signs that we have been to battle, that we have not only survived, but we continue to thrive. They come in all shapes and forms. I mean, there's certainly lots of physical ones. I think of my hearing loss. I have tinnitus. And I can hear it right now, it's constant ringing. Now, I probably could, maybe even should go get hearing aids. And it's not only because I'm vain, I am vain, but it's really much more because at least it's not that bad yet. And I wouldn't say I like it, but it reminds me that I probably got it from being out in the world, being in loud environments, right? Just sort of living hard and whatever. I think of it now every time as a warrior mark. Maybe you have an ache and a pain, especially second half of life and onwards. You can't be here without all kinds of aches and pains. And is there a way to think about that hand that was broken? Mine was broken back in a fight back in college and never really healed properly. And I'm not proud of the fight. It was a just cause. At least that's what I told myself when I woke up the next morning. But I think of it as a warrior mark, right? I have a line, scar, you can't see it right here, from when I was maybe 13 years old and was making a remote control car, building from scratch with my friend, and stuck the knife right through my hand by accident. And I look at it and there's a warrior quality to it. So certainly looking at the physical imperfections, not as imperfections, but as perfect, right? Perfectly imperfect. And they show signs that we have lived, we have loved, we have been out in the battlefield or the arena, as Roosevelt called it, and we've picked ourselves up again and again, and we've soldiered on. Those are warrior marks, right? The guy who comes to me and he's dealing with that inner shame, that regret. I don't want that for anybody, but I also think it has a purpose. I don't want to get rid of it. I don't want to hide it. Certainly we want to right the wrongs that got us into that place of regret and that place of shame. But regret means you have wanted and you've gone out into the world and you live and you want more, and it's not perfect, but you look back on your life with an appreciation for having given it your all, or maybe not having given it your all, but here you are, right? Still thinking about it, willing to face it, confront it, move through it, and change. Let me tell you a quick story. This one might go a little long. I'll try to keep it short, from the Hebrew Bible. And it's the story about Jacob. Now, Jacob was a morning of life boy when we met him. He was a liar. It's called Jacob the Liar in the rabbinic tradition because he just lied his way through life. He was not a stand-up guy, not in the morning of his life. And then about midlife, on his return to his home, he came face to face with the darkness that he had been perpetuated, the things, the harm that he had done, the way he had wronged his brother and his father and others. And so has this dark night of the soul. And in this famous story, it says that he wrestled through the evening until the break of dawn. And he was wrestling with an angel. Now, doesn't say what exactly this is. Sometimes it refers to it as a man, sometimes an angel. The mystical commentaries say he was wrestling with himself, with his shadows, with his demons, and he wrestled until the break of dawn. He would not let go. He would not stop doing this inner work of confronting, right, those broken parts of himself and taking stock of it. And it was a painful process. And it says that he wrestled to the break of dawn, and then his name was changed from Jacob, which means the heel. He was holding on to his brother's heel. He was not a warrior. He was a jackass. But then he becomes Yisrael. And Yisrael means to wrestle with God and prevail. And so his name is changed, and he becomes this warrior. But here's the interesting point. During the wrestling match, he was forever wounded. And it says he limped for the rest of his life. And that limp, right? Yes, he went back and he faced what he had did, and he confronted it, and he integrated, and he moved forward in his life in a constructive way, but he never let go of that pain, of that suffering, of that warrior mark. And so it's not about getting rid of those things, and it's not about being ashamed of those things. It's about, again, righting the wrongs and manning up, stepping up to the plate and moving forward in a different way, but not, again, about hiding our wounds, our past transgressions and indiscretions. It's about owning them, realizing they are part of what makes us whole. And really it begins for me when I stop thinking them as blemishes and as imperfection, as anything other than what they are, and that is warrior marks. So I challenge you, encourage you to go out into your life and start looking at the ways that you have failed to be a warrior, the ways you're being called to be a warrior, and when you warrior through and you moved on to the other side, to carrying those things proudly, that knowing that you have done the work of showing up and now you have warrior marks.